Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Mosaic podcast. I should have taped this part because I say almost the same thing, but I get so excited with each new guest that I have on. And my guest today is someone I really don't know. So I love the idea that I'll be discovering her with you as you discover her on this podcast. Sometimes I have friends on that I bring, but there's something about her and what she's doing that so intoxicates me and so excites me that someone would have the courage to work with people around the simple idea of no more nonsense. And that's what she does. Like, what would your life look like? Imagine what your life would look like if all the nonsense that you practice was no longer there. Would your life make more sense? How would that feel? Well, those are the types of things we're going to dive in today. But before we go in, I want to let you know who this person is and give you a short bio. You know, those of you who listen, I'm not a big bio person, but I want to say something so you know who's coming in. My guest today is Meredith Atwood. And Meredith Atwood, her hashtag everything, her at everything is swim bike mom. And she is a former attorney. She is a podcaster of a very beautiful podcast, and she's a speaker. She's the author of two books. The latest is The Year of No Nonsense. She's the host of the same 24-hour podcast, which I just love that idea, because what happens in the same 24 hours in your life and someone else's life and how that looks around. So I love that idea. She's been featured in the Boston Globe, the New York Post, the Seattle Times, and she's a contributing writer to Psychology Today and an advocate for sobriety. When I asked her what her purpose was, I love this response. She said, "My purpose in this world is to seek no master purpose, but rather to work on that which is right in front of me, to do it well and feel with my whole heart the direction I need to go." What a beautiful purpose. Meredith, it's with the deep love of my heart that I welcome you to the Mosaic podcast. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I feel so calm just listening to you.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard that before.
Yeah, there's something in the quality. I think after practicing meditation for 45 years, every day,
Yes.
and sometimes I was a monk in a monastery for 10 of those years, and some of those years we practiced 14 hours of meditation a day. So, and some of those years, to be completely transparent, I practiced 2 or 3 minutes, but I haven't missed I haven't missed the day in 45 years, and I think it just touches into something, a depth of a resonance of a voice that just you can feel it.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that you're calm. Don't fall asleep, okay? Or if you're falling
Oh,
asleep,
but you know what? I've had one of those days that's just been very busy in all good ways, but just hectic.
yeah.
And I literally just ran upstairs and sat down to do this. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then just listening to you, it was just reading my bio. And I'm like, like
Uh,
it's just great. So wonderful asset you have there,
I
Jamie.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I really do believe that. It's so interesting how just one statement can sort of say, when I think about the way that we live in the world that we live in, so many people get affected by the world. We walk into a room and we're affected by the room. We meet somebody who's angry, we get affected by it. But there's another way that the world can work, which is we can actually affect the room that we walk into. We can actually affect the person that we're in. We can actually affect the world that we live in. But all too often, we just don't do that. And
Yeah.
so I love that just even in simply reading your bio, it's like I was watching American Idol the other night, and this guy was singing, and they said, you could sing the phone book and it would still be good. Like your voice is just, so I love that. Anyway, enough about me. I'm getting bored talking about myself. Um, what did your parents do?
My dad was blue collar. He was a ceramic tile contractor. He learned the trade from his dad, and he became a tile setter and worked very, very hard. I witnessed my dad walking in every day drenched in sweat, and
Wow.
he was out the door before I woke up. So I saw that ethic. I saw the pain of it. I saw the pressure of owning your own business from a very young age, and I very much felt it. My mom stayed at home with me. I was an only child for all intents and purposes. I have some half siblings. But she stayed at home with me until I was probably high school, and then she went to work.
Wow. And so in a situation where one parent is at home with you all the time and one parent is, I'm not going to say virtually never there, but less there, right? Who did you find you wanted to impress more or please more
Yeah.
between those
So
two?
both of my parents were home all the time. So my dad left early and he was home by 1.
Oh,
So I had 2 helicopter parents
oh, okay.
for
So he left
sure.
early before you woke up, but he came back and he didn't work late into the night.
Right. And so I can talk about this because my parents and I have had very honest conversations recently about their helicopter parenting and how they gave me no space. So I don't feel bad riffing on them right now. They were very much there. They were there to a fault. And, for people that don't have involved parents, they're like, you're so lucky. But for those of us who had super involved parents, it feels very different. But I definitely wanted my dad's attention. I wanted his approval. My mom and I were at odds until probably I had my own children.
Wow.
And for a lot of reasons, family history is sometimes dark, and there were struggles there. And I think we were in competition for my dad and
Yeah.
his affection and his attention, and the power that comes with growing up and learning to see and love your parents and to feel their unconditional love that maybe you didn't think existed, but you just learn a lot as you grow and as you get older. And so the way I thought things were not necessarily the way things were.
Yeah.
But I know now that but I was always after dad's love. I mean, it was always dad I wanted to impress. And now I know I don't have to impress either of them, that they're cool with me. And that's a great relief. That's a
Yeah.
great relief.
So what changed from what allowed that moment to go from I always wanted to have my dad's love and impress him to that moment where you are now know that you don't have to do anything for their love. That's just there.
I came to terms with what it means to be an addict. And this is
Wow.
a heavy topic, but
Wow.
I'm 4.5 years sober. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I was basically a dry drunk, though. That's an AA term that bristles a lot of people, but it's effective. It's an effective term because when I started drinking at 17, I was trying to escape pressure. I
Mhm.
was trying to escape the feeling that I wasn't good enough. And I continued that habit and that behavior for 20 years. And what came out of getting sober was a lot of great stuff. I mean, I felt better. I didn't
Yeah.
spend so much money. I felt better in the mornings. And the misconception is you're going to get sober and things are going to get better.
Yes.
And they do. But there is another component that I've learned ever so recently, like within the last year and a half. And it kind of came along the same time I was finishing up my book, that emotional sobriety is a different layer to
Wow.
being actually sober. And so learning the process of I'm an addict, and that has such negative connotations, but an addict will leech on to whatever they can to excess, to try and fill a void, to fill a hole, to feel emotionally anywhere but where they are. And so it took me realizing that I was not feeling good enough, that I was trying to plug the hole with booze. And then when booze was gone, it was food. And then when food would get kind of better, I'd be in self-help books all the time,
Wow.
10 hours a day. It was always something, if one was good, 10 was better.
Yeah.
And to come to terms with, you've got a problem and you are not emotionally sober, that is what helped heal my relationship with my parents, because that was where it started. It started as a young child, all of these feelings, these emotions of not being good enough. And it's not their fault. They certainly had a role in it, but I'm responsible for my own adulthood. I'm
Yeah.
responsible for who I am going forward. And so coming to terms with all of that and trying to experience true sobriety, which has really only amped up for me recently, really, truly, honestly, recently, very recently.
Very
That is
recently,
the
within
gift.
the last, like when you say
Month,
it, it almost, yeah, that's what it sounds like. It almost sounds like,
month.
wow.
Yes, my eyes have been opened, and the ability to accept love and to feel fully present, aware, and accepted in my own body, skin, house, family, all of it has exploded in the last month with some of the work I've been doing. And it's all around this idea of emotional sobriety and working the steps and making amends. And whether you like AA or not, if you don't like AA, go get Russell Brand's book, Recovery, because he looks at the steps in a way that hit me like a 2x4. I mean,
Yeah.
and there is a way that if you've struggled with addiction, and if you don't like that word, if you've struggled with excess or clinging to things, or if one is good, 10 is better, if you feel that way about anything, consider looking at that book and thinking about if you were able to remove that compulsion to drink, to look at porn all the time, to whatever it is. If you were able to remove that, what would your life look like? What would your creativity do? What would you feel? And that's what has happened for me, because I've been able to clear so many things in the last month, to offer forgiveness, to accept forgiveness, to heal, to have hard conversations. All of this has happened very recently, and it has freed me. And
So,
yeah,
no,
I could go on. Sorry.
well, no, I would love to let you go on, and I want to let you go on. I just want to sort of ask the listener as they're listening, because I like to make it very real for them.
Mm-hmm.
How much of this are you allowing to enter into you? I want to point out something that I did, that I heard a little part of her story, and then I started to believe that her dad wasn't there. Well, look what communication does in one fat quick minute. Just because he left early in the morning didn't mean that he came home late at night. He was home and he was with her. Okay, so I want to apologize, my bad, for jumping to that conclusion. And then also, what I want to just ask people to say, whether what are you addicted to? As you're listening to Meredith speak, what is your addiction? Is it an addiction to success? Is it an addiction to food? Is it an addiction to sleep? Is it an addiction to sex? Is it an addiction to alcohol or drugs, or being liked or not being liked, or not feeling good enough? Where is your addiction lay? And as we go through this conversation, allow her words to penetrate you, so that she's not just talking and we're listening. She's talking, and it's entering. Um, and the reason I'm saying that is because I didn't let that happen. So to me, it's a sign that that's a sample of what we've got to do in this podcast, especially me and those of you who are listening, to just hear the whole story, not just jump to the conclusion. What I'm very interested in, because I'm probably addictive in ways that I don't know that I'm addictive, but I haven't ever been an alcoholic. I haven't ever been, used drugs that much. I mean, I use drugs a lot, but I could stop anything on a dime. So I think that meant, maybe meant that it wasn't. But this emotional addiction, is that something that AA talks about, or is that new terminology you're bringing up?
I'm not actually sure. So I've never been through AA. I've recently read Russell Brand's book, as I mentioned, and he talks about it, and I have heard it in the context of binge eating.
Yeah.
So I think it's a term that people are using. I'm not actually sure if emotional sobriety is in AA
Emotional
or not. So
sobriety. That's
I
what.
would be speaking out of turn if I said I knew where it came from. It's in my
But
brain. I've heard it somewhere.
okay, so but it's not a concept you've invented.
No, 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 no.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about emotional sobriety and what that means? Because so often we hear that addiction is a physical response,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we say the body just craves that, and given the opportunity, it takes it, and it's almost like a physical need that it has. but there's this emotional sobriety that I find just so intriguing.
Right. Well, knowing I'm not a psychologist and this is not my area of expertise, my understanding and how I am interpreting it to apply it to my life is somewhere, probably early childhood, we, particularly the people who need to be emotionally sober, received a message that we weren't good enough or we're fine if we get this, or this substance will make me feel better. A lot of times with substance abuse, people walk around feeling like they're a gaping hole, and then they have the drug or the alcohol and they feel normal.
Yeah.
So there is very much, and I had Dr. Howard Wetzman on my podcast a while back, and he has done some genetic research showing that there is a genetic component to addiction, the MTHFR gene. And if you have that expressed a certain way, you have a chemical situation where you don't produce as much dopamine. And so traditionally, people who are addicts don't have a natural way to produce dopamine as well as normal people. So here we
Okay.
are looking for ways to feel better. And whether it's drugs or alcohol, it's kind of like a pyramid, right? Drugs and alcohol are like heroin's at the top. It's, you know, the quote unquote the worst. And then you work your way down all the way to shopping and, you know, warm smiles, warm hugs, and a teddy bear. I mean,
Right.
whatever it is, like
Right.
ways to get dopamine hits. And so the idea of emotional sobriety is a way to live your life where you're not constantly seeking that hit, where you have an inner peace, an inner calm. You find your strengths from within versus external. You believe in yourself. You believe in a higher power, whether that's God or not, or, you know, Mother Nature. You believe that somewhere, someone, something is stronger than you, and you are able to surrender to that being, purpose, person. And with that, you admit that you don't have control over everything. And so what it is it's kind of, my understanding is it's a quest to find the strength within yourself and within the world, for how to survive, where maybe some of your messages and your internal messaging has been a little, you know, skewed. And you're rewiring patterns and habits to understand. So, like, for example, I have a deep need for comfort, and I don't know where that comes from,
Yeah.
but I need to be comforted, and I have found comfort in any addiction. Um, and so when I sit with that now, and I run through, okay, I don't drink, I don't smoke anymore, I don't have a sex. What can I? And it becomes this thing like, oh my
Where do I
gosh,
find it?
where do I get comfort? And so I'm teaching myself that that's an inner dialogue. It's just thoughts, and what is true, and where am I, and what, you know. So it's this whole look at your life and your internal dialogue in a way that you haven't probably done before as an addict, because the addict goes, pain needs comfort, go get it, and you go get it, and then you get relief, and then the crash comes and you go get more, and it just builds and builds and builds. No matter what the substance is, there's a constant seeking to feel better. And so learning to get emotionally sober is about learning to find it within you and within your higher power.
So I love that, and it makes so much sense. And I, if I were to look at my life, let's just get real personal if we can, just you and me right here, because nobody else is listening for this
No
moment.
one's listening.
Right? Okay. um, if I were to get real personal with you, I would say I know that place in me. I am strong in myself. I know that there's a higher power. I feel very connected to that higher power. I feel that peace which is within me. But I can't say that I am emotionally sober.
Mm.
And so I wonder what it really is that changes. Like, we were just having lunch, I've been having a busy morning talking to people talk to me all the time. That's just what happens. I talk to a lot of people, and they talk to me, and I listen to them, and I talk back with them. And we just had lunch. My wife just made me just a delightful little lunch, and I said, "Do we have anything sweet?" Because I like just that little taste of something sweet at the end of it. And so do I need that? Was my meal complete without it? Absolutely. But there's some sort of emotional component that gives. But I am at peace with myself. Like I feel
But
really.
did you have to have like 10 of them? No.
No, but I didn't have to have 10, but she gave me like four of these little tiny balls, right? And they were little fig bar balls, okay? And
Mm,
I looked and I said, she said, how was it? I said, well, I could have had another 100 of those. Those were really good, right? I didn't have another 100 of them, but
yeah.
left to my own devices, I might have, or I might have thought, well, that would be. So I wonder what it really is, because again, like I may be fooling myself. I may not be calm, but that fact that you said I've been running around and just the sound of the quality of your voice calms me. I believe there is something that
Right.
right
And
inside
you,
me. There is something inside me, and yet there's still. Do you think anybody is emotionally sober?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do. And I don't necessarily think it's a lifelong destination. I think when you decide to become sober, emotionally sober, you are emotionally sober because you are in a new stage of awareness. You're in a new place. And so your example about the fig balls, the prior me would have been like fig balls
Right,
and
right.
off we go. No thought to how I'm going to feel tomorrow, hungover from sugar. No thought to the calorie content, meaning forget your body dream. No thought to how that's going to impact my next meal. So no thought to my relationship to self, right? All of these things are addict behaviors where you're not in connection with your emotions, with your thoughts, with your goals, with the person you say you want to be, right? I want to be this person. Well, this person does not eat 100 fig balls. This person eats 4 and then does what she said she was going to do and goes about her day. So the fact that you have that awareness, I would say, if you were trying to be on a sobriety path, which it doesn't sound like you have any issues, but if you were, that would have been a really emotionally sobering moment. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great job because you didn't try and escape. You didn't try and chase the dopamine. You weren't like, oh, I got to have more of that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with seeking comfort in things that aren't harmful. And I forget Russell Brand's definition of addiction, but it's something like taking normal things to an excess and to a detrimental result. So it's not that fig balls are bad. It's not that wine is bad, but it's when you take it to a detrimental
Totally.
result
Totally.
that it becomes bad. And it's very individual. If I'm doing things that are against who I want to be, then I have a problem. And that's, I think, where the disconnect in addiction is, like the societal view of addiction. I think that's where the disconnect is, because people are like, well, I'm not an addict. I don't have a problem.
Right.
But are you living a life that is in contravention to who you say you are or who you want to be? Because if you are, you're probably suffering from some addiction in some areas. And that's all it is. It's like, how do we drill this down?
So I, I love your clarity and I love your honesty and I love your vulnerability in just talking about it. Okay. And I really want to take it to another question, but staying in the same place. Um, and I just passed the questions, just went right through me. Um, here it is. We have grown up in a society. At least I have. I'm somewhat older than you are, but I've grown up in a society. But I don't see it changing in the society of people growing up now, where it's even somehow maybe more exaggerated, where everybody talks about their superpowers and they have to have these superpowers. I did an experiment with people. I asked 1,000 people on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being what you would love to be, and you would love your children and your children's children to be, and 1 being what you would hate to be, and you hate for your children to be that. Where do you place the word ordinary?
Mm,
Where do you place the
wow.
word? Where do you
That's a
place the word
loaded
ordinary?
question. What is ordinary?
So where would you
Like,
put it on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would not put it on a scale. I
Okay.
feel like ordinary, like who gets to define that? I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know what to do with that, just because I don't know. I'm a contrarian sometimes.
Yes,
So
you
I
are
kind of,
contrarian. I
I
can tell
feel
that.
like, I'm like, what do you mean the scale of ordinary? Who defines ordinary? And I think that's the point, is you're trying to get to, like, okay, so if we're going to go ordinary would be technically a 5, right? Because if we're going to be average, if 10 is the greatest person in the world
Right.
and 0 is a loser, then okay,
But
ordinary is
no,
a 5.
if you had children and you said to them on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to be, I don't want you to be ordinary, or I do want you to be ordinary. Where would you lean? Would you want them to be ordinary or not ordinary?
I want them to be whatever they want to be.
No, yours great. I love you. So you are, unfortunately for me, I didn't run into one of you in my thousands.
Not one?
Not one.
Well,
I
I'll give you an example if you want.
hold on. Let me finish that point and then I'm go. 972 of the 1,000 people had ordinary as a 1, 2, or a 3,
Wow.
meaning they didn't
Okay.
want to be that at all. So I said, now on that same exact scale, 1 being what you don't want to be, 10 being what you would love to be, where do you place the word extraordinary? 968 of them gave it a 9 or a 10.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to those people, maybe it's just a crazy thing in the English language, but if you don't want to be ordinary, why do you want to be extra of something you don't want to be? And they would say,
Right.
well, no, that's not how I was defining it. I said, of course, now you're going to rationalize it, but that's really what the word is. And so for me, in writing my book, The Mosaic, it was all about ordinary people. And what happened in it was, when extraordinaries came together, extraordinary things happened.
Mm.
And somewhere along the line, we learned that ordinary is not a good thing, but the sun rises
Right.
every morning and it's the most beautiful thing in the whole world. It's the most ordinary thing that happens in the course of a day. It's ordinary for buds that appear on a tree when springtime comes. It's beautiful. And it's the most ordinary thing, but we were taught ordinary is bad and we have to be extraordinary. And I think it's the desire to be extraordinary, to be superheroes, to have superpowers, to have capes and masks on, and run through the world, changing the world and making it better, that makes us feel not good enough, because it's not sustainable. Even Superman took his cape off and his mask, right?
Yeah.
He was sometimes just Clark Kent, but we think we have to be these superhumans. So the question, way too long, I'm sorry. But the question is, where does the desire to have superpowers and the addictive personality interact?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hit the nail on the head. I think I was on a podcast earlier today and the guy had promoted me all week as Superwoman.
Oh, God.
And I was like, no.
Right.
No, please, dear God, no. But that's part of it. I mean, I became an addict because I thought I could not cut being extraordinary. And
Yeah.
it was expected to be extraordinary. And I was expected to be certain things because my parents worked so hard. And by God, I'm not going to work with my hands. My dad did. You're going to go to college and you're going to make money. You're going to get a real job. Like, I remember hearing, get a real job with a paycheck, work for the man, right? What do I do now? I don't work for the man. I left.
Right.
But yes, that expectation that we are here for some big purpose. I got to find my purpose. I gotta figure out why I'm here and how to change the world. And I got to do it all while my kids are young and I'm working a full-time job and I'm taking care of my parents and my kid. Like, that is why so many people are suffering. This whole idea that we've got to be extraordinary, when why can't we just be who we are and do the thing that's in front of us? And I mean, I feel this with my kids. I have 2 very different children, very different. And I love them both. Like, I swear when people are like, you have a favorite child, I don't. I have a
Right.
favorite child depending on the day.
Right.
Like, who's behaving? You're my favorite.
That's right.
But but they're so very different, and it's like I can feel that they're fine. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
I could push my daughter's super driven. It's like she's super driven, and I could just get behind her and push her. Excellence, excellence, excellence. Be who you want to, drive her through CrossFit. I have to hold back and I have to let her know it's okay to hold back and calm down. You don't have to save the world. And then my son is extremely talented, very artistic, but has very little care to give about drive. And so they're two opposing children.
I think we got the
But
same batch.
yes, but I just see magic. I
Yeah.
just see magic in them because they each have a very special ability and talent set that, if pushed to the limit, would be extraordinary by the world's definitions. My
Right.
son could be one of the best digital animators this world's ever seen. I
Wow.
swear to you, he's 12. He's brilliant.
Wow.
My daughter, she could win the CrossFit games if they're like pushed and said, you need to be. But you know what I do with those two very talented children? I let them be.
Yeah.
And
Beautiful.
they're going to be what they're going to be. And that's okay with me. Now, their dad, maybe not so. he struggles. We're working on it. He struggles. Right. He sees the talent. It drives him crazy. Wasted talent. And I'm like, dude, because he didn't grow up with the parents I did. He didn't grow up with that push. Totally. And I'm like, don't push them. You'll push them into addiction. They have my genetic code. But yeah, there's this constant pressure to be extraordinary and to be just something meaningful by whose definition?
So I love this, and it's just flowing into what I really wanted to find out. And it didn't flow the way I thought it might, or I had no idea how it was going to, but I love that this is where we are. With the backdrop we created, tell me what a year of no nonsense is, and tell me how that fits into either that need to be a certain thing other than we are, the need to be who we are, and the need to be better than we are.
Yeah.
How does that now on that overhead projector come into these two layers that we've created? Addicted personality, just being okay with being okay, and not pushing, but now add to that this idea that I can't have nonsense. There's no nonsense in my life.
Right. So I think the connection is, where is your true self in all of this? I think that is what a year of no nonsense is. It's uncovering your true self, your truth about the world. When you're able to look at your life, at your habits, at the people you keep company with, at your job, with a simple question: is this nonsense? Yes or no? This habit I'm doing, the people I'm hanging out with, the thoughts I'm having. If you can just boil it down to that simple question, you will learn a lot about your values, who you are, and where your addictions are falling. Because for me, alcohol was very much my biggest brand of nonsense, because it was the one thing standing in the way of what I wanted. And what you want is what you want. And there's nothing wrong with wanting what you want, but it's when we deny ourselves the potential for dreaming of what we want, and we deny ourselves the potential path that is possible, that we start to act out of alignment with ourselves.
So let me just, like, in a storybook world, that all sounds great because it's true. And it's so clear when you say it that way, right? And it really is that clear. Except a lot of people I meet don't really know what they want.
Right.
Right? They say they want one thing, but they sure don't act like they want that. And when I ask them, how come you act in a way that isn't the way you say, they say, well, because maybe I really don't want what I think I want. Right? Because my actions speak louder than my words. And if they're conscious, there's so much fear that we have. There's so much, and is that just is fear nonsense? Like,
no,
I love this
survival mechanism.
No, seriously.
you hit the word though. You said conscious. You said if they're conscious. Ding, ding, ding. Most of us are not conscious. Most
Yeah.
of us are on autopilot, or we're living out the names and numbers that we've been told growing up. They've stuck with us. Oh, you'll never be a runner. Oh, you're so not smart. Oh, you're such a pretty face, but your body. These things we have inhabited, we have allowed them to become us. And so, yes, we desperately want a hot bikini body, but we were told we just had a pretty face and you
Right.
better just live with it. That's in there. And
So
so,
is that nonsense, or are those limiting beliefs?
yes, they're nonsense. And your limiting beliefs are nonsense.
So you just are categorizing all these
All the gunk.
as just non. Why do you believe all that nonsense? Is what some
Why do
people.
you believe what is in the way? And when you ask someone, what is standing in the way of your greatest success? People will be like, oh, well, I don't have enough money, or, my dad, or blah. Like, you will come up with a list of blames.
Right.
You will come up with a list of excuses. You will come up with all sorts of reasons why you don't have your version of success. Number one, you may not have your version of success defined clearly. But number two, you're not taking responsibility for why you don't have it because you're not conscious. You're not tapping into what is actually limiting you. Oh, it's you. You're in your way.
Right.
It's you,
Right.
I promise. But we're not listening. We're not holding ourselves accountable for what we want for
So what?
whatever reason.
I love it. So now you found that person. Okay, you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting with that person. They're doing work with you. You've gotten them to see that a lot of the things they think, believe, and feel are just holding them back because they're just right in their own way with limiting beliefs about themselves, fears that seem real but might not be real. What is it you recommend people do to rid themselves of the nonsense and allow them to become themselves? Because on my website, the first page of my website is, I would like to reintroduce you to yourself.
Mm. Yes.
Because I think people don't know who they are anymore.
Right. Yes.
And so when you say to someone who doesn't know who they are, what do you want? I mean, they want a lot of different things,
Right.
but they don't know themselves to know what they want. So how do you get through the nonsense to the person?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing that I like to start with is the truth. And this is a really hard place. If you don't know who you are or who you want to be, let's just start with a list of things that are true about you. And then let's ask, after you make that list, are those things actually true? It's like Byron Katie's The Work. And
Right.
it's like, is this true? Can you actually know it to be true? Like the sky is blue? Or is that just something that you've been told? Or is it something you've told yourself? And so I think there's a culture right now, positive vibes only.
Right.
And I want to slap that
Okay,
because
good.
that is part of the problem. And
Totally.
what I mean by this, and this infuriates a whole group of women, and I am allowed to talk about it because I am not a skinny woman, but people saying that we need to accept our bodies as they are. Okay, I get that. We should love ourselves. But if you don't like being fat and there is something deep inside of you that desperately does not want to be, stop trying to positive vibe only yourself into thinking it's okay. Because if it's not okay in your heart, it's not okay with you. And so that's what I like to get out of people. Like, are you truly happy being 50 pounds overweight? Or are you trying to not be disappointed when you can't lose, or because history has shown you can't lose weight? Like, what does that mean? What is the truth around your body image? What is the truth
So
around your marriage? All these things, like, what is the truth?
so I again love it. And can I push you a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. Um, Perspective changes truth. Do you believe that statement?
Perspective changes. Maybe. Depends. Your
Let's
like
just
your
make a
personal
let's make an
perspective.
easy example. There's
Yeah.
a there is a car crash that happens on the corner of 4th and Main. There are 1,000 people on each corner of the four corners of that corner. There are also people in stores looking at the car crash.
This feels like a law school question.
Okay. Sorry.
Don't give me PTSD.
Sorry.
What are the claims? Who's the plaintiff?
No, there won't be any claims going on.
No.
But there's people looking at it from 3 stories up above the ground. There are people looking at it from 30 stories above the ground. There's a helicopter that's circling that saw it from 1,000 feet up in the air. When you ask each of them what happened, each of them will say a slightly different thing happened at the same exact thing that they
Right.
saw. And for each of them, that is true.
Right.
So what is the truth now?
The truth is your truth.
The truth is just the perspective you see.
I think it's the perspective you feel. Like
But hold on a minute. So if I can adjust your perspective by showing you a different perspective, does your truth suddenly not become your truth?
No, that's when your truth changes. I see what you're saying. And I think we're talking like a car crash versus I am fat and ugly. I feel like those are two different things. But
maybe they're not.
Huh?
Like I would like to toss over the net that maybe they're not. I am pretty at peace with myself. I am also an obese man. My body is probably 80 pounds over what it should be.
But you're okay with it. You're happy with yourself, and that's good.
But there's nobody that would say that this body is the right body for me to have. And if you were to come to me and say, Danny, I have a special magic feather that will drop 50 pounds off you if I tap you on the shoulder, I would say go for it. It's not that it's not right. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being leaner. But the fact that I am heavy doesn't make me ugly. And I think that you've seen this. You've seen people walk into a room. I know I certainly have. I've seen people walk into a room that were the most beautiful people you'd ever want to see. And you go up to talk to them and you can't stand to be in their presence for more than a couple of seconds, right? And I've walked into a room where I've seen people that were ugly and awkward and weird. And you go up to talk to them and you can't tear yourself away. And they have a crowd of people around them because there's just something magnetic about them. And it doesn't matter if my truth is that if you're fat, you're ugly, or if you're fat and you're ugly, because what happens is there's something inside of us that is so much more beautiful than what we think we see. So my whole thing is about helping people see what they don't see. Like, it's easy to see someone's heavy. It's easy to see someone isn't as beautiful as another person. But can you see what is beautiful about them?
Sure. And we don't have a problem seeing what's beautiful in other people.
Oh, can you see what's beautiful about yourself?
I say yes, but I think you have to understand how you feel about yourself first. And all I'm saying, I'm not here saying, oh, everyone should be skinny. I am 192 pounds today. I am not skinny. And I'm perfectly happy with myself, sort of, today. But I think we have to understand our true feelings about ourselves, as dark and as horrible as they are. Because if we are not conscious and you go and you tell someone, love yourself, that unconscious person can't do it.
Right.
They can't. There's too much in there. There's too much nonsense because they think I'm fat, I'm ugly, no one loves me, I'm never going to be anything, because that's the programming, right? And so what I'm proposing is hear that. Go ahead and hear those horrible things because they're in there anyway. Like, let's bring them into the light. And then, so that's your current truth. And then let's dismantle it. Let's then say, what is true here? What is nonsense? Is it nonsense that you don't think you can become anything? And what does becoming mean? What do you even want? Like, what part of that is nonsense? So I'm not saying fit into a mold. I'm saying hear what you're saying.
Right. So
pick the nonsense and dismantle it.
So the place that I would do is, first of all, me personally, I would never walk into a room and tell anybody to love themselves. Right?
Good, because I'd leave.
Right? Because
like, whatever, Danny, I don't love you. You don't tell me what to do.
I think most people would. But I would walk into a room and from the very depth of my heart say to somebody, I love you. You know that? And it might sound manipulative. It might sound strange.
And I would say, I don't trust you.
Yeah. And that's okay. And you know
Right.
what I would do then? Because here's a beautiful practice. And it comes from the trash man in my book, The Mosaic. I would say, tell me all about that. Tell me what you don't trust about that.
Right.
Put it all right in here. And they would say, Danny, it's you that you're a creep. Like, how can you walk up to me and tell me I love you? I would say, please just tell me more. Like, put it all in here. Let it all empty out, because here in the emptying out process of all of that stuff that is real for you, that you really believe, you get a chance to maybe experience yourself without that stuff inside you for just a moment.
Right. See, you think you're being oppositional to me, but you're actually affirming it.
I
You're
love
actually affirming it, because yes, if I come up to you and I'm like, you're crazy, you're a creep, and you tell me why, I'll tell you my current truth, and you will say, but I love you anyway. And I'll go, what? Yeah. And then we start to dismantle it. Yeah. So that's, you think we're on the same page.
No, what I love is how this conversation is bringing clarity to people who are listening. And I love that when to me, it's the opposition of ideas that makes clarity and innovation really come to be. And what I want people to understand, just like we said in our intention before we even set out, is I want them to hear not only the words that we're saying, but the feeling behind it. And one of the things that I loved in your response to me, no defensiveness, just this idea of how do we bring together again, which is what people of harmony and people that are at peace with themselves always come to find a place of how do we bring things back together, rather than how do we separate it and make it work. And because we grew up believing united we stand, divided we fall. Right. And yet we practice divided we fall. And so I love what you're all about. And I love this year of no nonsense. How does someone start to practice it? Can they read your book, and can they get it from your book, or is the book just like an aperitif that they get before the meal that they sit down to?
Oh, I feel like I don't know that word. I assume it was an appetizer.
Maybe it should have been. It probably should have been. It's a little drink, a little.
No, so what is it? Oh, never mind. I'm going to blow it. No. So when I finished writing The Year of No Nonsense, I turned it in and I told my husband, I said, I will never have another book in me. And he said, why? And I said, I just gave that book everything I had. Wow. I gave it everything I knew up until that point, that I thought, if someone reads this and they're hurting, this will help them. If someone reads this and they've had enough, this will help them. And that is what I wrote. So it's not an aperitif. I don't do French. Okay. It is a manual if you really want to change your life. Now, it's not for everyone. I've gotten people who said, I got to chapter 2 and I threw it in the trash. And I'm like, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. And this is where it's like, right. Oh, really? Tell me why. And the things that people get hung up on tell me a lot. And I'm like, okay, you're just not ready. Yeah. You will be. And this is the pre-contemplative stage on the TTM transcendental change model. Like, yeah, you're just pre-contemplative. It's fine. Come back when you're contemplative. And that's okay. But this book is a simple methodology for getting unstuck, because you're not broken. You may feel broken. I too have felt broken. I went through a stage in my life where I thought I wanted to kill myself every day I drove home from work. I've been there. And this is a way to get to the next step. And what I've learned, and when I said, oh, I gave that book everything I have nothing left, that was just the beginning. Now I'm on to this emotional sobriety thing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the Year of No Nonsense will take you to here, but it's not going to get you emotionally sober. I got to get to work on this, because I've learned so much since the books come out, just about myself. And so it is a guide. It is uncomfortable at times. You'll learn a lot about me. But I do that in a way to hopefully let down the guard of people thinking I'm the only one who's gross. I'm the only one who's broken. I'm the only one who's done terrible things. No, Meredith Atwood has them in her book, and you can read about them and feel like, oh, I'm not so bad.
Right.
But it's about the idea that we need to remove the stigma of addiction. We need to remove the stigma of talking about what we're all doing, what's all plaguing us, how we're hurting. Like, let's get it out there and let's talk about it. And that's the goal of the book. I wish to God I had this book at 20. I wish
Yeah.
someone had handed me my own book. Is that egotistical? Probably. But it
No,
was my life. It would have
no.
helped me.
When I was at Hay House, one of the things that I saw in the people that I brought, that many of them I brought there, is that they were writing books that changed millions of people's lives, but they were actually writing the book they most needed to read.
Yeah.
They weren't writing the book they were experts on. And
Right.
and when they would get into trouble, or they would come to me, because often they would talk to me, because I didn't want anything from them, I would just say to them, the best thing you can do right now is read your book. It's so perfectly suited for this situation.
Yeah.
And you're helping millions of people. Read it. It's a fabulous book. Read it. What surprises you most about where you are right now?
The calmness. I am a self-professed nut job. I am a self-professed go-getter, always hustle. And look, I will not deny the art of the hustle. I'm all for it. Like, I will get off the phone, this calming conversation, and I will run around. Like, and so for me to be like, oh, I'm so calm and emotionally sober, I am, but I'm also very high performing. But I have a peace and a certainty, not in a way like I got this all figured out, but a certainty in who I am becoming is aligning up with who I've always wanted to be for the first time in my life. And it has come through being more authentic, in a way that is holding my own personal integrity, is holding myself responsible for the things I say I want and to act accordingly with that. And I think that's where our big disjointedness is coming from, is we say we want to be a writer and we never write. Or we say we want to do, I want to start a business, and we don't do anything towards that. And so personal integrity, I'm learning from the Handel group with my life coach, is about doing what you say you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And then that aligns with your dreams. I want to be a race car driver. Do you have a car?
Right.
Like that kind. No, I don't have a car. Well, let's get you a car, that kind of stuff. Dream big, but then do things in the direction of that dream, and then don't beat yourself up for it, and don't get on that superhuman thing. But
What do you
yeah,
think? What do you think prevents most people from doing that? I mean, it seems so commonplace that people want something but then sabotage themselves or don't do it. Of all the work that you're doing with people around no nonsense life, what do you
the
find is a common denominator?
I think the programming that we have and that we continue to repeat in our head, the internal dialogue, the things we say to ourselves, they're so deep. And in what you've talked about a lot today is consciousness.
Yeah.
And we are unconsciously held back by the beliefs that are ingrained in our blood, right? And so when we know we need to do this thing, but that voice that's really deep down and we're not hearing because we're not conscious, we're not hearing that that's your uncle's voice when he said you'd never amount to anything.
Yeah.
And so you don't even try because you're never going to amount to anything. But I think there is a very strong connection to that inner parent voice, that inner child voice. And if we're not conscious, we're not hearing it. It just feels like this immovable mass inside of us. It
Yeah.
feels like the inability to find that motivation and the gumption to do anything. And so that's the common denominator that I'm learning with working with people, is it's the inner voice that is enforcing the things we don't want. That is it. And so when you start to hear that, you can start to change it, and you can start to say, hey, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
Why would I say that about myself? I say I want this thing. Why am I going to say I can't have it? Why am I going to say you're no good? Yeah, and that's the main thing, is listen to what we say to ourselves and fix that.
I love that, because I created an equation. I don't think it's my equation somehow. I think it's been before me. It's been said, but it just came to me. which is our thoughts become our words tell our stories, and our stories create our life.
Mm.
And if you change any one of those things, every one of those things will change. And so it's so interesting to ask yourself, what are the words that you're actually saying, and how are they limiting you from actually having the life that you want? And even if you listen in this conversation, I'm sure Meredith's used some of them. I'm sure I use some of them. And just see, what are the words that we're saying that are in contrast to the life we want to live.
Right.
I think I could talk to you all day. I know I could. I love the conversation, and I love what you're doing. But in honoring your time and the time of people listening, I want to do that. Um, what is, when you look out your window and you see the world that we live in today, is this the world you always dreamed you'd want to give over to your children and your children's children?
Oh, no. It's not the world I thought I lived in. It's not the world that I thought. That's such a big question, because so much has changed from when I set goals to go out into the world, and there's so much to be angry about.
Yeah.
There's so much to be grateful for. Um, I don't know how I feel about that. That is a very big question. I'm going to actually leave here and think about that, because
Good.
I think especially right now, I feel like things are on a micro level because we're trapped at home.
Yeah.
But when I think about my direction and where I want to be in 10 years, and it's very macro. It's very like I'm getting my hands dirty all over the world, and it's a bigger goal, a bigger like I'm touching earth on the other
Right.
side of the world. It's not micro, but right now it feels very small, and I feel very scared if I take that too far down the rabbit hole about my children and their choices and what's ahead for them. Like, that feels very scary. And so maybe I kind of stick my head in the sand when it comes to thinking like that, because I like to deal with what's directly in front of me, because nothing's promised. And I think this current COVID time has shown us that we don't control anything. And
Yeah.
so much of what we try to do is control.
Yeah.
And so I really have an extra focus on presence right now. And, like you said in the beginning, my purpose is doing the work that's right in front of me. And to me, that is being fully present. And so to think of the world that's getting turned over to my children, I feel like if I start thinking about that, I'm not going to be good at my presence.
Cool.
And maybe that's closed-minded, but
No,
yeah.
so let me rewind it a little bit, because I hear exactly what you're saying. So we know the thing of momentum, that if we leave the world going the way it's going, that it'll continue to go in the way it's going.
Yeah.
And so if we don't want the world to be the way it is, which it seems like you are, sort of said, at one hand, there's a part of you that doesn't, and a part of you that sees, in 10 years you'll be doing something that's different than what you're doing now. But what's one thing that you would suggest people do right now, right present, right here, right in lockdown, that would help to lean the world towards a place where, when we ask that question again in 2 years, you
Mm.
would say, boy, it's so much better than I thought. Yeah, I love the world.
I know there's a lot of pressure right now to do big things during lockdown. Oh, we have all this extra time, and you should do something creative or big. And that overlooks the pain that a lot of people are going through.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's disingenuous. But even for the people that are suffering, even for the ones who don't know what's next, I think to have a mindset that we're coming out of this better than we went in, and that we all can just close our eyes and say, whatever that means, we're going to come out of this better. And whether that's, oh, now I have a spiritual practice, or now I love what is under my roof so much more, or hate it and know I
Yeah.
need to make a change. Um, Regardless, I think that if we can focus on leaving the situation better, if that would be our only goal, whatever that looks like,
Right.
I think that would get us all through it, because there's so many lessons and there are opportunities. And I don't just mean financially and career wise. There are opportunities to slow down, to restructure your life, to look at your children differently, to breathe, to sleep in a little, to shower. Like, just what opportunity is in front of you?
Yeah.
Let's grab onto that.
I want to thank you for coming. I want to thank the people who are listening for listening and for coming all the time to listen to the podcast. How can people get in touch with you? We'll put everything in the show notes, but what's the cleanest way for them to get in touch with you?
I'm everywhere at Swim Bike Mom. So you can email me at swimbikemom@gmail, my website, social media, all Swim Bike Mom. I work for myself. I have my own email. If you email me, I will respond to you. So
perfect.
that's it.
Thank you again so much. I just want to take 1 minute to summarize. I love this podcast, and I love what Meredith said. And I love sometimes how simple complicated things can be. And I love how complicated sometimes things can be when we don't realize how complicated they are. For instance, this whole idea of addiction, this whole idea of sobriety, this whole idea of emotional sobriety, this whole idea of no nonsense, this whole idea of being true to yourself, of knowing yourself enough to know what a no nonsense life looks like for you. That no nonsense life for you might not be what anybody else's no nonsense life is. But that no nonsense life for you allows you to live your life from a place where you are doing the things you need to do and want to do in order to get to the place where you want to go. And you're not allowing addiction, nonsense, emotional attachment to things to get into your way. Can you imagine having that clear a path of life? Can you imagine just walking in a way where your obstructions are taken away one by one because you actually look at them and you deal with them and you let them go? That seems to be the promise of the book, The Year of No Nonsense. And I would invite you all to, before you even like this podcast, which I hope you will do, before you write a review of this podcast, which I hope you will do, go to whatever bookstore is available to you and ask them for a copy of The Year of No Nonsense. Look up Swim Bike Mom and get in touch with her in whatever way you can. And open up dialogue. Because if there's something getting in your way, there's something getting in your way. How cool would it be to relieve yourself of that something and just be able to walk free, run, swim, bike, triathlon, which we didn't even talk about, towards where you're going. So again, thank you so much for coming. Meredith, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Danny.
It's my honor. And until next podcast, thank you, Mosaic people. I welcome you, and please leave a review and a response and rate this, and we'll see you again soon.